with regard to the necessity of impeachment. It was Robert Jackson, our prosecutor at Nuremberg, who said, if you have a principle, a precedent that goes unrebuked and it's an abuse, it will lie around like a loaded weapon, ready to be used by any future incumbent who establishes an urgent need. If this president's actions and claims of monarchical power, actually they're super monarchical, because if you examine our Declaration of Independence, the indictment against King George III, this president has claimed far more power than King George III. But if we do not rebuke these powers, they then become precedents that will lie around like loaded weapons, a sword of Damocles over us forever. Then there was also mentioned previously about Caligula. And, well, this president shouldn't be at all associated with that particular emperor. You remember one of his infamies that he placed the laws very high on the walls so no one could see them, and then he could trap them into violations. But we've had testimony before this Congress, Senator Feingold's office, that shows that this administration promulgates executive orders, revokes them in secrecy, and then claims they're classified so we don't know whether they're in existence or not. That really betters the instruction of Caligula.
I guess my question is that is there a limitation on the ability of the executive to provide false information to Congress that we rely on that gets us into a war? And if we don't pursue impeachment, what else could we do? How do we enforce the constitutional limitations on the use of torture? We've had this administration essentially just redefine torture to permit what everybody else in the world believes is torture. And we've had allegations by Republican-appointed officials who have accused this administration of firing U.S. attorneys because they refused to indict Democrats in time to affect an upcoming election, and suggesting that others may have kept their jobs because they, in fact, pursued frivolous charges. In our investigation of these allegations, we've been faced with witnesses who refused to respond to subpoenas, others refused to cooperate, claiming unprecedented privileges. So I guess my question is how we can enforce the limitations on power, on executive power, in light of the situation we find ourselves in without using the impeachment inquiry process.
When President Nixon was under investigation by the special prosecutor, and there was a concurrent Senate Watergate hearing, then a House impeachment hearing, there was very deep examination. I was in the Department of Justice at the time, and then acting Attorney General was Bob Bork, a later Supreme Court nominee, as to whether or not you could criminally prosecute a president in lieu of impeachment while he remained in office. And it had been highlighted in part because you may recall that Vice President Agnew was actually prosecuted for tax evasion, and then he resigned afterwards. He probably would have been impeached if he didn't resign. But the conclusion was that you cannot criminally prosecute a president who's incumbent because there's just one figure who can make executive decisions. You can't have an acephalous branch, so to speak, unlike the possibility of prosecuting a member of Congress or a Supreme Court justice where the institution would continue to function. Short of impeachment, there isn't anything you can do about a president, and that in some sense underscores the political nature of the decision. It's one that can't be shirked because there isn't any other way to get at an abuse of power. I'd just like to make one observation about the idea of misleading Congress as an impeachable offense. And this is a quotation from James Iredell. Now, he was appointed by George Washington to be on the first Supreme Court of the United States. He was there, if you will, at the creation, to borrow from Dean Acheson. And he was speaking to the North Carolina Ratification Convention. And this is what he said: "The President must certainly be punishable for giving false information to the Senate. He is to regulate all intercourse with foreign powers, and it is his duty to impart to the Senate every material intelligence he receives, whether he believes it or not. If it should appear that he has not given them full information, but has concealed important intelligence which he ought to have communicated, and by that